Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Have you ever spoken English and immediately thought, why did that sound so bad? You're not alone. Today, I'm going to show you simple but powerful ways to sound smarter and more confident in English without complicated vocabulary or stress. These are real techniques native speakers use every day. So relax, get ready, and let's start improving your English right now. How often does this happen to you? You say something in English, and right after that you think, this was so dumb. This was so dumb. I sounded so stupid. Or you start speaking like this, we're going to be discussing some really sophisticated, method. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? How often does this happen to you? You say something in English, and right after that you think, this was so dumb. This was so dumb. I sounded so stupid. Or you start speaking like this, we're going to be discussing some really sophisticated, method. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? This used to happen to me all the time, and honestly, it still happens to me sometimes. I say something and then I'm like, can we just re-record it? Can we re-record the real conversation? But of course, in real life, you can't just re-record conversations. So today, I'm going to show you how to sound smarter in English without stressing about it. For a long time, I thought that to sound intelligent, I needed to memorize a lot of advanced vocabulary and a lot of fancy idioms. I believed that using big words would impress people and make me sound more like a native American speaker. But here's the twist. Clearer language actually makes you sound smarter. In fact, there are a few research-based habits that can make you sound more intelligent almost instantly. And surprisingly, most of them rely on saying less, not more. Before we continue, can I quickly ask you for something really important for me and my team? Can you please subscribe to this channel? We've noticed that more than half of our views come from people who are not subscribed. And when you subscribe, you become part of our community. So please, before watching the rest of this video, subscribe, hit the like button, and let's continue. Now, the first strategy is called the simplicity. Strategy 1, the simplicity intelligence paradox. The simplicity intelligence paradox might sound a little counterintuitive at first. But simple language actually makes you sound smarter, not dumber. Research from Northwestern University talks about something called cognitive load theory. Basically, when you use very complex words and complicated idioms, you force your listener's brain to work much harder just to understand what you're saying. And when their brain is busy decoding your words, they're not really focusing on your ideas. But when you use short, clear, and simple sentences, their brain relaxes. They understand you faster. And because of that, they naturally think that you're the smart one. Let's compare two sentences. The intricate interplay between linguistic proficiency and cognitive processing speed specifically influences the perceived intelligence of a speaker. Honestly, I even had trouble pronouncing that sentence. Now listen to this version instead. The faster and clearer you speak, the smarter you sound, because people focus on your ideas, not your words. The same rule works in your native language too. If you can't explain a complex topic to a 10-year-old, it usually means you don't fully understand it yourself. True experts don't hide behind complicated language. Just listen to a TED Talk. They use very simple English to explain very complex ideas. So next time you want to sound smart, don't focus so much on vocabulary. Focus on clarity. Now, let's move on to strategy number 2. Strategy number 2. Use silence as punctuation. Many people think silence is awkward. You're afraid that if you pause or hesitate, people will think you're stupid, so you try to fill every small gap with words. But that fear is exactly what makes you sound unconfident. You start second-guessing yourself in the middle of your sentences. You rush your words, you make more mistakes, And ironically, you end up sounding less intelligent than you really are. Let's think about the difference between two examples. Confidence isn't about being loud, it's about being clear. And when you pause, it shows control. Now listen to the same sentence said in a different way. Confidence isn't about being loud, it's about being clear. When you pause, it shows control. Those few seconds of silence completely change how your message feels. They give your listener time to process what you just said, and they show that you believe your words are important. A Stanford study found that speakers who pause strategically are seen as more intelligent and more trustworthy than people who talk nonstop. Because when you pause, it feels like you're thinking, not just reacting automatically. Make sure you're not speaking just to fill the silence. Speak because you actually have something worth hearing. The key is to pause after your point, not because you forgot what to say, but because you're letting your words land. Silence isn't hesitation. Silence is punctuation. Let's take a very simple line as an example. Less is more. Say it out loud twice. First, rush through it. Then pause after each part. Less is more. Less is more. Can you feel the difference? That small pause is where your confidence lives. Try it the next time you speak. Make your point, then stop. Let this silence do the work. And speaking of making your ideas clear, it's not just about how you talk. It's also about how you present your thoughts visually. Whether you're preparing a presentation for work, a report for school, or a carousel post for LinkedIn, clarity always wins. Now that we've talked about the power of silence and clear presentation, let's go back to something just as important: how you structure your speech in English to sound smarter and more confident. Strategy number 3: mirror sentence structure, not vocabulary. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you think about this approach?" You could simply answer, "It's good." And there's nothing wrong with that. But a smarter, more natural response would be something like, "I think this approach has potential because..." Did you notice what happened there? You didn't repeat their exact words. Instead, you repeated their sentence structure, their pattern. This technique is something linguists call syntactic priming. It's one of those psychology-based language hacks that native speakers use all the time without even realizing it. And now you know about it too. When you mirror someone's sentence structure, their brain recognizes it as familiar, and that familiarity creates a feeling of trust and connection. It's almost like their mind thinks, "Oh, they're speaking my language. They're thinking the way I do." And here's the best part. It doesn't require any extra effort. In fact, it often saves you time. All you need to do is pay attention to how the other person frames their question, their tense, phrasing, or rhythm, and reflect that same structure in your answer. Once you start noticing this technique, you'll see it everywhere. I personally learned it during my podcast interviews, where I had to react to what people were saying while also preparing the next question. You'll notice politicians, journalists, and even your favorite YouTubers using this method constantly. Now let's move on to strategy number 4. Strategy number 4: use micro-transitions. Have you ever wondered what makes native speakers sound so smooth and confident when they talk? It's not that they never hesitate. It's that they use micro-transitions to connect their ideas naturally. Instead of filling the silence with or like, they use short transition phrases that keep the conversation flowing. For example, here's the thing. What's interesting is, the way I see it, to put it another way. For example, you could say, "I think grammar is important," but then add, "Here's the thing, clarity matters more." These small connections make your speech sound more organized and intentional, even when you're still thinking about what to say next. So instead of using fillers, use transitions. The trick is to memorize just 5 or 6 of them and rotate between them naturally. Over time, they become automatic. That way, when you need a moment to think, You won't freeze or rush your words. You'll stay in control of the conversation. Now, let's talk about strategy number 5. Strategy number 5, contrast framing. It's not that, it's that. Smart communicators don't just share opinions. They position them. They often show both sides of an idea before making their main point. Instead of saying, I think remote work is effective, try saying, I don't think remote work is perfect for everyone, but for people who thrive with autonomy, it's incredibly effective. In just one sentence, you've done something powerful. First, you acknowledge nuance, which signals intelligence. Second, you showed that you've considered different perspectives. It sounds like you respect other opinions too. And third, you made your own point sound more thoughtful and grounded. This method is called contrastive framing, and you'll hear it everywhere, from academic interviews to speeches by CEOs and leaders. You can use it with almost any topic. For example, it's not that grammar doesn't matter, it's that clarity matters more. Or, I wouldn't say AI will replace teachers, but it will definitely change how we learn. Notice how you're not weakening your opinion. You're simply framing it in a smarter, more balanced way. And framing is everything. It's what separates confident communication from simple black and white thinking. So next time you share an idea, start with a small contrast. That one sentence can instantly make you sound more credible, thoughtful, and intelligent. Now let's move on to the final strategy.
Strategy number 6, the evidence light approach. You don't need to quote studies or statistics to sound smart. But you do need to sound like your opinions come from real experience, not just from thin air. Instead of saying, social media is bad for productivity, try something like, I've noticed that people who check social media during work often take longer to get back into deep focus. That's just what I've observed. This sounds more thoughtful and believable. Researchers call this evidential framing. You're showing that your beliefs are based on experience, observation, or logic, not just on rumors or things you heard online. You don't always need formal proof, just simple phrases like, in my experience, from what I've seen, based on what I've read. These small additions instantly make you sound more aware and credible. It's a subtle change, but it has a big impact on how people perceive you. So those were 6 powerful ways to sound smarter in English, without memorizing huge vocabulary lists or overthinking every sentence. Strategy number 7, speak in clear examples, not abstract ideas. One thing that makes people sound smarter in English is using clear, simple examples instead of speaking in very abstract terms. Many learners try to explain ideas in a complicated way, using big words and long explanations. But native speakers often do the opposite. They make their point clearer by giving a short, real-life example. For instance, instead of saying, good communication improves productivity, you could say, good communication improves productivity. For example, when a team clearly understands their tasks, they finish projects faster and make fewer mistakes. See the difference? The second version feels more real, more understandable, and more intelligent. Examples help your listener's brain connect your words to real situations. And when people understand you easily, they naturally see you as smarter and more confident. This technique is used all the time by teachers, speakers, and professionals. They don't just share ideas, they show how those ideas work in real life. So whenever you make a point, try adding a simple example after it. You don't need a long story, just one clear situation is enough. It makes your English sound more natural, thoughtful, and powerful. Strategy number 8, slow down slightly to sound more confident. Many English learners speak too fast because they're nervous. They're afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of forgetting words, so they rush through sentences without breathing. But speaking fast doesn't make you sound smarter. In fact, it often does the opposite. Native speakers usually speak at a calm, steady pace. Not too slow, but not rushed either. When you slow down just a little, several good things happen. First, you make fewer mistakes. Second, your pronunciation becomes clearer. And third, you sound more confident and in control. People have more time to understand your ideas. and that makes your message feel stronger and more intelligent. You don't need to speak like a robot. Just give yourself a small pause between thoughts. Take a quick breath. Let your words land. Remember, confidence isn't speed. Confidence is clarity. So next time you speak English, try slowing down just a bit. You might be surprised how much smarter and more natural you sound.
So today, we talked about several simple but powerful ways to sound smarter and more confident in English. We explored how using clear language can make your ideas stronger, not weaker. We learned how silence can work like punctuation and help your words feel more meaningful. We discussed how mirroring sentence structure builds trust and connection. We looked at how micro-transitions keep your speech smooth and organized. We saw how contrast framing makes your opinions sound more balanced and thoughtful. And finally, we talked about speaking from experience to sound more credible and intelligent. The most important thing to remember is this: you don't need complicated vocabulary to sound smart. You don't need perfect grammar every time you speak. What really matters is clarity, confidence, and connection. English becomes much easier when you focus on sharing ideas, not impressing people. So try one or two of these strategies in your next conversation. Notice how people react. Notice how your confidence grows. And most importantly, enjoy the process of learning and using English in real life. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really supports our work and helps this community grow. Also, share this episode with a friend who's learning English. It might help them too. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm really happy you're here, and I'm proud of you for working on your English. I'll see you in the next episode with more practical tips to help you speak naturally and confidently. Until then, keep practicing, stay curious, and believe in yourself. Bye for now.